Welcome to episode 5 of the Bain Report Podcast. So excited to have you here today. Today's going to be probably a longer episode than we've had the last couple of weeks. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot of news in the NBA, a lot in the MLB, some FIFA World Cup news to talk about, and then some more questions and hot takes from you guys. So just preparing yourselves. This is going to be a longer episode, but it's going to be a great one. Super excited to talk to you about all that's happened over the last week here in sports. Starting off with, obviously, the biggest news in sports so far, Giannis Antetokounmpo has been officially traded to the Miami Heat. Now, Giannis had been asking for a trade for a little over a year now. Since last offseason, he'd been asking for a trade. The Bucks tried to work something out last offseason and during the trade deadline this past season. Couldn't get any deals done. And leading up to the NBA draft on Tuesday, the Bucks had decided they were going to ship him off before the draft. No matter what, they were going to get rid of him by the time the draft came around. So around Monday night, around midnight, get the notification that Giannis is traded to the Miami Heat. The two teams that were in contention, I think I mentioned this last episode, were the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. Both teams were eagerly pursuing Giannis. Many believe that the Celtics had the upper hand, being that they had Jaylen Brown in their trade packages, but turns out the Bucks preferred the Heat's offer. Now I'm going to go over the offer and talk about my thoughts on it and where this leaves the Bucks, the Heat, and even the Celtics now. So the trade package goes as follows. The Heat receive Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Portis, while the Bucks receive Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Khalil Ware, Kasparas Jakučiūnas, a 2026 first-round draft pick, the 13th overall pick, which ended up turning into Nate Ament from Tennessee, a 2030 first-round pick swap, a 2031 and 2033 unprotected first-round picks, and a 2033 second-round pick. So altogether, the Bucks receive 4 players and 4 picks, including the pick swap on top of that. But we don't really count that because they're not adding a draft pick. They're just swapping with the Heat for the 2030 draft. The initial thoughts behind this is the Bucks, in my opinion, it's weird to say fleeced, but the Bucks, I think, won this trade. You know, they get 4 players and 4 draft picks for Giannis, who only had 1 year left on his deal anyways, including a player option. Yeah, so we'll go over the contract this year right now. I'll do that real quick. Giannis has 1 year left on his current deal, which is a $58 million salary for this upcoming season, and he has a player option for the 2027-2028 season. So it's up in the air if Giannis will come back with the Heat for next season. Giannis is also allowed to sign an extension 6 months after the trade. So 6 months from now, which would be around December, January this year, we could see Giannis sign an extension, which would keep him at the Heat and in Miami for longer. We'll see what he decides to do there, and if Miami plans to bring him back. I assume that Miami's intentions are to sign a big extension, because you wouldn't trade all this stuff away if you didn't think or want to bring Giannis back for multiple years in the future. So yeah, the Bucks get rid of Giannis, who didn't want to be there anyways, and Bobby Portis for a pretty good Tyler Hero. Like, I'm not a huge Tyler Hero guy, but he's a good player. Jaime Jaquez, who is super young and very talented. Khalil Ware, who was a first-round draft pick just last year, or maybe 2 years ago, one of the two, who's also been performing pretty well for a young guy. He's got a lot of upside. And then Kasparas Jakučiūnas, who's been okay. But another great thing that they got was, as I said earlier, the 4 picks as well. Getting 4 picks on top of that is even better. We talk about how they got Nate Ament in the first round of this year's draft on Tuesday, getting him at the 13th pick. Nate Ament, I don't really like his game from what I watched of Nate Ament in March Madness in the tournament. I didn't think that he was worth a lottery pick, but obviously the Bucks see something in him that I don't. He's definitely a prospect, so we'll see if the Bucks can get something big out of him. But like I said, it's weird to say that the Bucks fleeced the Heat, but the Bucks end up taking at least 3 huge pieces from the Miami Heat, and Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, and Khalil Ware. And Jakučiūnas is good too, but he's not one of those core pieces that the Heat had in Hero, Jaquez, and Khalil Ware. Hero, I think he's 28, maybe 29 coming into this season. Jaquez is Young is even younger. I think he's 23 maybe. And then Khalil Ware's like 21, 22. So a lot of young pieces that the Bucks can build around for the next 5 years as they start the rebuild this season. As well as, like I said, the four picks that they got and the pick swap for 2030. I think the Bucks really did win this trade, and it's shocking to say that, but the Heat are in a position now. They have Giannis. They got their big star that they wanted, but at what cost? This roster is completely depleted right now. The Heat have Giannis and they have Bam. And that's basically it. There's nobody else on this roster that really moves me and makes me think that this team's going to be a contender. Like, the immediate thing was, oh, Miami has Giannis, they're going to contend. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. This roster isn't great. And if Giannis's big thing about getting out of Milwaukee was that he wanted to compete for a championship, leaving Milwaukee to go to this Heat team, he's now left this Heat team even more depleted than I think Milwaukee was. And so I don't know. Maybe Giannis is going to go crazy. Him and Bam, maybe they'll go insane. I don't really like the way the two of them fit together. We'll see. But maybe Giannis will shock me, and the Heat will go in and they'll contend in the East. The East is a little weak this upcoming season, in my opinion, so we'll see if he can find a way to make a push there. But like I said, never going to underestimate Giannis. Giannis is an amazing player, one of the best we've ever seen, one of the most dominant we've ever seen. But definitely a little concerned if I'm a Heat fan, because you've depleted your entire roster to bring in Giannis, so we'll see where that leaves them. Now, it's come out since this trade went down that the Celtics' offer was Jaylen Brown and 2 first-round picks for Giannis, straight up, which I agree probably isn't as good of an offer for Milwaukee. Like, Milwaukee, if they were to have gotten Jaylen Brown and 2 first-round picks, it would have been great. Like, Jaylen Brown is better than all 4 of the players that the Bucks got by a landslide. Jaylen Brown is a top 10 player in the league right now, and he would have been great to have at the Bucks. But the Bucks don't need one superstar right now. They need to build around some young pieces and prepare for the future. Getting Jaylen Brown just puts them right in the position they were at with Giannis, just with 2 more first-round picks. So I think that the Bucks made the right decision in taking the Heat's deal, but it's interesting to see that the Celtics genuinely were willing to ship out Jaylen Brown for Giannis. Jaylen Brown and 2 first-round picks for Giannis. That's the Celtics offer. As a Celtic fan, I'm glad that we didn't end up going through with this. I love Jaylen Brown, and I don't think adding Giannis would have fixed everything, to say. Like, Giannis and Tatum together, I mentioned last episode, would be insane. Like, watching the two of them play together would be absolutely incredible. I would love every second of it, and that team would be super, super good. But I don't know if that necessarily fixes everything. I think if you have a full season of Tatum and Brown back together next year, because remember, Tatum didn't play most of the season this past year because he was rehabbing from his Achilles tear in the playoffs in 2024 and 2024-2025 season. So having a full season of healthy Tatum and a full season of healthy Brown, I think is just as productive, if not more, than having Giannis and Tatum this upcoming season. So I think keeping Brown and the 2 first-round picks is definitely worth it over getting Giannis. So I think we made the right decision. The problem is that now the Celtics have kind of opened themselves up into they've opened a can of worms offering Jaylen Brown, because now it's and I'll get into this later once I go through the other trades that have happened over this week, but the Celtics are in trouble now with Jaylen Brown, and it could lead to a very, very bad situation in Boston. Another one of the trades that went down this week, it's not a huge deal, but it makes more sense once we get to the LaMelo trade later, but Julius Randle was traded to the Nets in a 3-team deal earlier this week. The Nets received Julius Randle from the Timberwolves and a 2026 first-round pick, which ended up being the 28th pick. They took Joshua Jefferson in this year's draft. The Timberwolves received Mogwai. I'm a casual. I don't know who this is. Mogai, who was from the Bulls, and a 2026 second-round pick, which the Wolves turned into Isaiah Evans, which I think is a phenomenal pick. I'll get into that later as well when we talk about the draft, but getting Isaiah Evans in the second round for the Wolves is incredible. That's a great pick for them, great value pick for them. And then the Chicago Bulls received Nick Claxton from the Nets. So a 3-team deal that basically just had the Wolves getting rid of Julius Randle, dumping his contract, getting him off the team, which I think is the right decision. Julius Randle wasn't super impressive in the regular season last year and definitely wasn't very good in the postseason this past year. So getting rid of him and trying to start new, which we now know what their plan is going forward thanks to the LaMelo trade, but getting to start new, I think this is the right decision for the Wolves, although it sucks that they end up basically getting nothing for him. Like, if you go and you look at, if you connect all the dots from all the trades they've done over the past year or two with Julius Randle and with Cat and everything, the net is basically a net negative. Julius Randle is basically, they basically gave up stuff to get rid of Julius Randle, which sucks if you're a T-Wolves fan. But at the same time, you can still be positive with where this team is going and the direction they're headed. I think the Nets did a good job here. You know, they get the 2026 first round pick. They turn it to Joshua Jefferson. I'm not as familiar with Joshua Jefferson's game, but obviously he's a decent player. We'll see how he fits into that scheme. And getting Julius Randle's not a bad player. He's just not a top 50 guy anymore, which is fine. But he's a very strong veteran presence and somebody that can help this Nets team as they continue their rebuild over the next couple years. And then the Bulls receiving Nick Claxton is great. I don't think the Chicago Bulls are going to contend this upcoming season, but for them to get Nick Claxton is great. This is a great move for the Bulls. They didn't really have to give up much. They gave up Mogay, and that was basically it. They also gave up, I believe they gave up the 2026 second round pick was theirs as well, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. But overall, pretty even trade around the board. I think every team got exactly what they wanted, and there's not that much to talk about. But this trade is what set up the foundation for the next trade I want to talk about, which is the one that happened just a couple days ago, the day after the draft, the morning after, actually. LaMelo Ball traded to the Timberwolves, and a two-team deal between the Timberwolves and the Hornets. Crazy, crazy deal. Like, it came out on, I don't know if it was Wednesday night when the second round was happening, or if it was Tuesday night when the first round was happening, but Shams Charania had tweeted out saying that, the Hornets were listening to calls for LaMelo, and I think everybody was kind of like, oh, okay, fine, like, you're allowed to listen to calls, but I don't think anybody expected him to actually get shopped out because of the way the Hornets played last year. The Hornets were a play-in team, almost made the playoffs, and they were one of the hottest teams in the second half of the season last year, and they showed some real promise for the future as well with this roster and the way they were playing, and it was just, there was a lot of promise there, and it was all run by LaMelo. LaMelo ran the offense, and he was the most efficient player on that team. When he was on the court, that team was special. When he wasn't, that team was okay. So shipping off LaMelo like this, it was very unexpected because he was going to be, he was the catalyst for this team's success in the second half of last year. And getting rid of him when you're kind of on the upward trajectory is an interesting thing to do, for sure. So the full trade details, the Hornets received Naz Reid, a 2033 unprotected first, a 2028, 2029, and 2030 first-round pick swaps. All three of those are first-round pick swaps. And then they received a 2029, 2032, and 2033 second-round pick. So the Hornets basically received Naz Reid, a 2033 first, and 3 second-round picks. And obviously the 3 first pick swaps, they're not gaining any picks, they're just swapping their picks with the T-Wolves. So in reality, it's Naz Reid, a first, and 3 seconds for the Timberwolves, who got LaMelo Ball and Josh Green. My take on it, I think the more and more you think about it, it's still very confusing as to why the Hornets got rid of LaMelo. Like we said, when LaMelo was on the court, this team was by far way more efficient than they were with him off the court. So getting rid of him kind of just sets you back to where you were a year ago or 2 years ago when you were just not even contending at all. And then you bring in Concanipo last year and this offense looks so good. And then you just get rid of the guy that runs the offense, which again doesn't make any sense to me. Naz Reid is a great player. I'm not saying that he's a bad player, but he's not LaMelo Ball. He's probably gonna slide in as their center, which is great. The Hornets needed a true center, but who's going to, I don't know. I guess they're handing the keys now to Brandon Miller and hoping that Concanipo can take another step forward as well. But I don't know. There's a lot of question marks around this Hornets team now getting rid of LaMelo Ball. When you look at the contract aspect of it, Naz Reid, he has 3 years left on his deal with $75 million spread across those 3 years, including a player option for 2029 and 2030. So the Hornets have up to 4 years with Naz Reid without needing an extension. So that's not bad. Like in the next 4 years, I could see the Hornets competing, in the last 2 years of his deal, maybe for even a title. If they can find a way I think they need to bring in another true piece and a true playmaker like LaMelo was. Because right now I don't think they have a true playmaker. Like, Khan's a great shooter. Nas is a great big man. Brandon Miller's a good player. But none of them are LaMelo Ball level playmakers. And I think if they can bring in another playmaker over the next 2 years, this team can actually compete in the East. But we'll see. And then for LaMelo Ball, he's got 3 years and $131 million spread across those 3 years. On his contract, no player or team options at the end of that. So the Wolves have 3 more years, assuming they don't sign him to an extension. We'll see what they want to do with that. My guess is this is going to be a true 3 years. If the Wolves can get it done, they get it done. If not, this is a huge waste. But I don't see the Wolves re-signing him to an extension. My guess is they're taking a shot at this 3-year window with LaMelo and Ant to see if they can find a way to win a chip. So I talked about from the Hornets' perspective. From the Wolves' perspective, this is great. Having Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball on the court at the same time, being your 1-2 punch at the point guard and shooting guard positions, that's going to be lethal. The two of them together on the court will be disgusting. I know Rudy Gobert is old. He's not great on the offensive side of the court, but he's still got great defense, and he's still a great player overall. So having LaMelo and Ant with Rudy, and then with Jaden McDaniels and Ayo Dosunmu, this team has what it takes now. I think they can truly compete in the West. I think the Thunder and Spurs are still better, but they're both still so young that I think the experience for the Wolves might just be enough to get them into that upper echelon tier in the West. I think right now, after this trade, there are 3 teams in the West that you can truly say are contenders, and that is the T-Wolves, the Spurs, and the Thunder. I think those are the 3 true contenders in the West. I think the Nuggets are still great. I still like the Lakers. I think if LeBron does sign back, him and Luka and Austin Reeves all healthy going into the playoffs, they can make a splash next year. But I think overall, the Wolves have put themselves now into that contending tier, that upper echelon in the West. So, incredible deal. Super shocked that this ended up actually going down. A lot of drama for the NBA. Which leads me now to what I was talking about earlier with the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics have now found themselves in a very, very bad position. As we said, it came out that Brad Stevens was willing to give up Jaylen Brown and 2 first-round picks for Giannis, which, when you hear that, especially as the second best, or even some people will say the best player on your team, when you hear that your GM's willing to trade you away like that, that sucks. That hurts. And then to double down on that, Brad Stevens says, we're still willing to shop him off. They're saying, if anybody comes in with an offer good enough, we'll give away Jaylen Brown. And Brad Stevens set the asking price right now for 4 first-round picks, which is absolutely nuts. I don't think anybody's willing to put up 4 first-round picks for Jaylen Brown. I just don't see it happening. But Brad Stevens coming out after the trade didn't go through with the Bucks, and saying, we're still willing to give him up, that says a lot. And it puts the Celtics in a really bad position coming into this season, where there's going to be drama in this locker room. And, Joe Mazzulla has 2 options. He's got to find a way to right the ship and get this team to somehow bond, even after all the drama that's gone down with Brad Stevens trying to get rid of Jaylen Brown. Or it's going to be too much, and this Celtics team that's super talented and I think can compete in the East is going to fall apart, and it's going to be tough. So there's 2 real options here for the Celtics. You either have to get rid of Brown now because you're willing to you've made it publicly clear, hey, we'll get rid of him if anybody wants him. Anybody want Jaylen Brown? So you either have to get rid of him, or you got to find a way to right this ship. Brad Stevens, Joe Mazzulla, you have to get in there, talk to Jaylen Brown, and tell him, hey, we were just seeing, okay? We still love you. We want you to be here. Jaylen Brown has said he wants to play in Boston. He loves Boston. He loves JT. At least publicly, he said all these things. So I don't think he necessarily wanted to leave. There was a lot of talk at the end of the season when he said that this past year was his favorite year, and many people were like, oh, that's because he didn't have to play with Tatum. He got to be the number 1 guy. And people assuming, oh, he wants to go play on his own. That's not necessarily what he meant. That's not what he said at all. He just said he had a lot of fun this year, probably because he got a lot more chances, yeah. But he didn't say, oh, I don't want to play here anymore because JT's here. I want to go lead my own team. He never said that. So it's just going to be a very interesting locker room dynamic and a very interesting season. And as a Celtics fan, I'm not looking forward to it, coming off of a very disappointing postseason this past year. and now we've got to deal with all this coming into this year. So I I don't think a deal is going to get done this offseason for Jaylen Brown. I don't think there'll be a deal done at the trade deadline either. I think if a deal gets done, it'll get done next offseason. Like if this team just explodes this year, we have a losing record, we don't go anywhere in the playoffs, or we don't even make the playoffs, that's a different topic for a different time. But if this team underperforms next year and like really underperforms, then there'll be talks next offseason with Brad Stevens trying to get rid of Jaylen Brown, probably for less than 4 first-round picks at that point because his trade value will probably decrease a lot. But there's just a lot of drama that's surrounding this Celtics team, and it's definitely scary for a Celtics fan like myself. So fingers crossed that nothing comes out of it. We're praying that this team can find a way to put it together. That leads me to the next topic. I want to talk about the NBA draft. Happened last Tuesday. Didn't get to watch it. I was busy spending time with family and friends, but I kept up with it, and I kind of put together my favorite picks of the draft. I'm not a huge basketball guy. I mean, I'll be honest. I prioritize football and baseball. I watch a lot of college basketball, but I don't watch a ton of NBA unless it's the Celtics. So I don't have a ton of basketball knowledge. But from what I have watched and heard and looked at statistically, these are my thoughts coming out of the draft this year. So obviously, first overall pick, the Wizards take AJ Debance. I think this is the right pick. I think that as a prospect, he's the most enticing player as a prospect. And he put up the stats to prove that he's not just like an experimental guy. Like, he led the entire NCAA in player efficiency rating. So he's proved that he's the best player coming out of college. I mean, and he's not just an experiment. Like, the Wizards know what they're getting out of this guy. And he has such a high ceiling that I think this is the no-brainer number 1 overall pick, which I'll actually talk about a little bit later. We had a hot take come in over the week that I really was excited to talk about and dive into. Second pick, the Utah Jazz take Darren Peterson. I love Darren Peterson. Darren Peterson is probably, I would say, my third favorite prospect in this draft. Great player. There's a lot of question marks around, the cramps and the whole jokes about does he even like playing basketball? Like, does this guy even want to play basketball? There's just a lot of question marks around that because there wasn't ever truly any like medical test done to prove that he was injured when he was leaving games during the season at Kansas. So we're just kind of taking him at his word. So it's just a really weird situation. A lot of question marks coming with Darren Peterson, but there's no doubting his ability, and I think he's one of the most talented, if not the most talented player coming out of this draft as a pure just talent. And I'm super excited to see what he does in Utah. I think the Jazz are building something special down there with Jaren Jackson Jr. and the team they've put together over the last couple of years. It's going to be exciting to see them play over the next couple of years. For sure. The third pick, the Grizzlies take Cameron Boozer, and we knew Boozer was gonna be here at 3. The Grizzlies adding Cam Boozer to this roster. I don't know where he's gonna fit in, if he'll play the center role. He'll probably end up playing more of a power forward, my guess, because they're probably gonna keep Zach Edey at that 5 spot. So you'll have Zach Edey at the 5 and then Cam Boozer at the 4. We'll see if Ja can get back to how he was playing a couple years ago before all the allegations and controversy and stuff like that. If Ja can get back to prime Ja like we've seen, this team can definitely be dangerous with both Boozer and Edey on the court at the same time. So I like this pick for the Grizzlies. I like Cam Boozer. I think I would say he's the second most pro-ready prospect in this entire draft, in my opinion. Fourth pick, the Bulls take Caleb Wilson. Caleb Wilson, kind of like Debance, he's more of a prospect to say. He still performed. It's not saying like he didn't perform very well. He still performed great at North Carolina this year, but he's still more of that prospect and more of that guy that you're drafting because of his high ceiling. I think the Bulls got what they wanted here. The Clippers, they get the 5th overall pick from Indiana in the Zubac trade, and they take Keaton Wagler out of Illinois. I think this is a pretty good pick. The little bit I watched of Wagler during the NCAA tournament, he performed pretty well. He looks great. Excited to see what he does for the Clippers. The 7th overall pick, Sacramento Kings took Darius Acuff Jr., and I am so high on Darius Acuff Jr. I think he's the second best player in this entire draft behind Debance. I think he's the most pro-ready out of all the players in this draft. I think that when you watched his game, he was just incredible to watch. Incredible. He led that Arkansas team farther than I think they ever should have gotten in the regular season and in the tournament. Like, Acuff was just so talented and so fun to watch. He's just an incredible shooter, an incredible playmaker. The defense is bad. I'll be honest. The defense is really bad, and I don't know if that's an effort thing or if that's just he sucks at defense. I don't know. We'll see if the Kings can get that sorted out. But I think this is a perfect pick for the Kings. To get Acuff to fall all the way to 7 is a dream come true if you're Sacramento. And I really love Darius Acuff Jr. I think this is probably my favorite pick of the entire draft. Just really love Darius Acuff Jr. pick here. The 10th pick, the Bucks took Braden Burries out of Arizona, another guy that I really liked, and I think because it was such a talented class, he falls all the way to 10. If this is any other draft class, he's probably a top 5 pick. I'm not gonna lie. Braden Burries, super talented out of Arizona. Watching him play this year was really good and really fun. And this paired with Nate Ament in the first round in the lottery. The Bucks have 2 lottery picks this year. They get 2 great guys that I really like. I like Burries way more than Ament. I think Ament's just kind of We'll see. He's more of a prospect, but Burries coming out of Arizona, really like him. I think he's going to be one of those pieces the Bucks use going forward in their rebuild. That's going to be huge for them over the next couple years. Excited to see what he does in Milwaukee. The 12th overall pick, Sam Presti did it again. The Thunder get Adai Mara at 12, and it's just not fair. You know, getting I can't pronounce his name, sorry. Getting Adai Mara at 12 is just a steal. You know, this guy, I believe he's 7'2". I think is his height. He's got a great wingspan as well. People labeling him as the Wemby stopper. People saying that he's coming for Chet's job, that basically Chet's going to be unemployed, which is hilarious. I think Chet's a great player. I think he just kind of, the lights were too bright almost, and Wemby's just better. I think Wemby's the best player in the NBA, and so you pair the best player in the NBA against anybody, they're going to look bad. And so I think Chet just looked bad for that reason, but I think Chet's a great player, and I think putting Chet and Mara on the same team, having both of those guys, gives the Thunder the opportunity not to have to rely on Isaiah Hardenstein all the time, which is going to be good for them as well. So, super excited to see what Mara does on OKC. I'm terrified to see what OKC does now. We'll get to another pick actually right after this I want to talk about, but Mara is a huge piece for the Thunder going forward. And then another piece that they got at the 16th pick, the Grizzlies drafted Bennett Sturts, and the Thunder said, hey, we wanted that guy. So they end up trading with the Grizzlies, and they get Bennett Sturts. So now the Thunder have acquired Adai Mara, who I really love. I think he's one of the best big men prospects in this, maybe the best big man prospect in this draft. And then to go and get Bennett Sturts at 16 as well is incredible. Sturts is a great player out of Iowa. He had an incredible season. He broke my Clemson Tigers' hearts in the tournament. Dude is insane. Watching him play firsthand, like a full game, just watching him was something special. He's a great player, and he's going to make the Oklahoma City Thunder even better. So the Thunder get 2 absolute steals here in the first round to make them even more formidable, and it's just getting scarier by the day what Sam Presti can do. I think it's genuinely time to start saying that he's the best general manager of all time. Moving forward to the second round, I talked about this earlier in talking about the Julius Randle trade, but the Nets traded their second round pick to the T-Wolves, pick number 33, and the T-Wolves at 33 draft Isaiah Evans, who, being in the ACC, you know, Clemson plays Duke every year. I got to watch a lot of Duke games just because I'm an ACC guy. Watching Isaiah Evans, this dude is super talented. He's a great player, an incredible shooter. And for him to be paired along with Ant and LaMelo in Minnesota is going to be incredible. I think this is a great pick for the T-Wolves to get Isaiah Evans, who in my opinion is a first-round talent. Getting him in the second round is going to be huge, and it's going to be one of those picks that we come back to in the next 2 to 3 years and say, wow, that was a steal. That was a huge pick for the T-Wolves. Love that one. And then my last and final, like, huge big pick that I liked personally was the 41st pick, which the Heat traded the Thunder the pick, and the Thunder get Otega Oweh from Kentucky. And I watched 2 or 3 Kentucky games this year, and I think Otega Oweh is a great player. He's obviously not bad. I don't think he's better than any of the guys I've listed so far, but he's not a bad player. And when you watch him, he's a very talented player. And I think the Thunder getting him late in the second round is just another example of them getting a steal. I think he's a early second round talent, and them getting him, and then the Thunder getting him mid to late second round is just another steal. And the Thunder add another piece to their depth, and it gets scarier and scarier by the day how good the Thunder could be next year if all these guys end up panning out. So that's just kind of my favorite picks, the picks that I like, my takes on those. Like I said, I don't claim to be an expert on this, but in the little bit of basketball that I've watched, NBA, college, those are my favorite picks from the draft and my thoughts on that. Moving on to something we've talked about a lot, actually, in the first 4 episodes of this podcast, Brennan Sorsby and his controversy, his gambling scandal, and him applying for the supplemental draft. Earlier this week, I believe it was Monday. It might have been Sunday or Monday. I don't remember. It was not long after I posted episode 4 that the NFL officially declined to hold a supplemental draft and denied Brennan Sorsby's petition for the supplemental draft. So, Brennan Sorsby, he gets the extra year of eligibility for Texas Tech, and then the whole world comes after him and Texas Tech, and excuse me, sorry. So the whole world comes after him and Texas Tech, and then in my opinion, I think Texas Tech kind of shoot him out the door, just said, hey, you should kind of get out of here before we end up paying the price for what you did. And I think that's the right decision. So Brennan Sorsby, he declares for the supplemental draft, which, it's not a guarantee that's going to happen, but he declares for the supplemental draft. He puts in a petition for a supplemental draft for him to get drafted. And the NFL basically says, no, we don't want to have that. So they declined his petition for a supplemental draft, which adds a ton of different problems. Sorsby's attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, stated that the NFL refusal to host the supplemental draft contributes a clear violation of the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, and antitrust laws for the NFL. Kessler plans to take this one to court, obviously, against the NFL, and his plan is to find a way to allow for a late supplemental draft or for the NFL to give Brennan Sorsby free agency clearance before the start of the 2026-2027 NFL season. So if he's successful in this lawsuit, then Brennan Sorsby very well could end up getting his supplemental draft, or he'll just be granted free agency clearance, which in that case, he'd just be able to sign with whichever team he wants to sign with, whichever team will sign him. But this leads 4 options for Sorsby. The first option, which we just talked about, was if his lawyer Kessler can find a way to win the lawsuit, Sorsby can achieve a late supplemental draft, or he can achieve free agency status for before the 2026-2027 NFL season. So that would be his preferred option, was if he can find a way to get the supplemental draft held in time before the season, or if he can get free agency clearance. That doesn't happen, you start to look other places. There's the option for alternative leagues. The UFL 2026 season just wrapped up I think last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. So the UFL's next season will be in 2027, around March is when they kick off, which it doesn't make sense for him to do that, because by then the draft will be coming up, and so it just doesn't make any sense for that. There was the option of him playing in the CFL, the Canadian Football League, but the CFL actually banned Sorsby from the league because of the gambling incident that he had while in college. So Sorsby doesn't have an option to go to the CFL, and it doesn't make sense for him to go to the UFL. The third option is to go the JUCO route. So when Sorsby put in his petition for the supplemental draft, he had to renounce his NCAA eligibility to apply. So basically, he got the extra year of eligibility from the court in Texas Tech, in Texas. And for him to leave and go to the supplemental draft, he has to say, hey, NCAA, I'm renouncing my eligibility to go forward into the NFL draft. It's the same thing as if a college player wants to go to the NFL draft in their junior season. If they're going to declare they're going to the draft, you can't come back. Once you've done that, you don't have any eligibility anymore. You cannot come back. So him declaring for the supplemental draft means he renounced all of his eligibility in college. So the rule is now he can't return to any FBS or FCS schools. He has no eligibility remaining. but he could transfer to a JUCO or NAIA program, which obviously would be a very low level. He would probably be the best player in either of those leagues. So that's an option if he really wanted to do that. But at the same time, like, how much help is that to play at JUCO or NAIA? And the fourth and probably most likely option is he starts training now for the 2027 NFL draft. It'll give him 10 months to prepare himself, prepare his body, and just work with a quarterback coach to prepare him for the 2027 NFL draft. He has been confirmed that he will be eligible to enter the 2027 NFL draft. The NFL put out a statement saying he's welcome to enter the 2027 NFL draft. So that is probably what's going to end up happening if Kessler can't find a way to get Sorsby a late supplemental draft or a free agency status. He'll probably end up just training for the next 10 months for the 2027 NFL draft. So those are the options for Sorsby, but yeah, it seems like the Sorsby saga is starting to come to an end. It's starting to come to a head, and Sorsby, unfortunately, isn't going to get what he wants, I don't think. And the thing is, even if he were to achieve a supplemental draft or free agency status, I don't know that he'd get signed or trade. Like, I don't know if any team would take him. Like, all the off-the-field issues and the scandal and all that stuff, most teams probably aren't even going to want him. You know, and they've had supplemental drafts. The last supplemental draft was in 2023. Not a single player was taken. Just because they have a supplemental draft doesn't mean teams have to draft you. You don't just get drafted because they're having a supplemental draft. It's not a participation award, you know. So if they're gonna have a supplemental draft and you enter, you still have to be picked. You can't just you don't just go to whoever. Like, teams still have to want you. So it'll be interesting to see if they do allow for a late supplemental draft. If any team is even going to be willing to put picks on the table for him. It'll be definitely very interesting. Something we'll be following very closely here. But the saga is starting to come to an end. Very, 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 very interesting end for sure. Moving on to some Major League Baseball news. Just yesterday, actually I think it was 2 days ago, the Mets announced that they're firing manager Carlos Mendoza. The Mets fired Mendoza after a 34-47 start. They are last in the NL East. They are 13th in the National League, and they are 26th in Major League Baseball in terms of standings. This isn't a shocker. Like, if a team starts out bad, oh well. But the reason that this isn't a shock is the Mets' 2026 payroll is $329 million. That is the highest in Major League Baseball by almost $20 million. The Dodgers are the next closest. I believe they're at $310 million is their payroll this year. So the Mets are about $20 million over the Dodgers for first place. So, you know, if you do the math, if you have the highest payroll, you should probably be one of the best teams in the sport. But instead, you are bottom 5 in the entire league. You're the worst in your division, and you're the third worst in the National League. So, you know, the Mets just have not panned out well. You know, they've got a less than 0.1% chance to make the playoffs. They're currently 34-48 since their one game after firing Mendoza last night. So, yeah, I can't say I disagree with the Mets' decision here to fire Carlos Mendoza. That was he's definitely underperformed as the manager. Now, the Mets have dealt with some injury issues, and that's not an excuse, though. Like, every team deals with injuries. You still have to be able to put up or shut up at this point. Like, you spend $330 million, you better be getting wins, and to have not only a losing record but a bad losing record, you know, being 14 games under 500 at that payroll is unexcusable. So definitely understand the decision there. Moving on to some controversy, the All-Star voting. The first phase of the All-Star voting has officially closed. They're moving on to the second phase to decide the starters. And there's a lot of controversy to talk about. To start off, Ohtani and Ernie Clement earn automatic starting positions because they were the top vote getters in the National League and the American League. Ohtani received the most votes in the National League and Clement the most in the American League. So the two of them have confirmed their spots as starters. They don't even have to go into the second round of voting, which is it's good for them. I think they both deserve it. Definitely Ohtani in the National League with the season that he's having. He deserves to be a starter. And then Ernie Clement, out of all the American League second basemen, he's by far the best. So definitely agree with those two things. It's the other stuff that I don't agree with, which we'll start here. Pete Crow Armstrong is currently 10th in National League outfield voting. which is, say what you will about Pete Armstrong. I personally don't like him. I think he's just, I just don't like him as a person, as a player. He's just he kind of like ruffles my feathers in a way. And it's the way he is, the way he acts, the way he plays. He plays kind of like a Jazz Chisholm, where he's kind of careless in a way. And he's very like flashy, and it's probably the old head in me coming out being like, baseball shouldn't be played like that. But, he's got a flash to him. But there's no denying that PCA is a great player. He leads the entire MLB in WAR for position players. He's got a 5.0 WAR, which is the highest out of any position player in all of Major League Baseball. Obviously not counting Ohtani because he pitches and hits, so he has a little bit of an extra boost. But out of just position players, he has the highest WAR in all of Major League Baseball at 5. And for him to be 10th in NL outfield voting is insane. I think he can still technically make a roster. He better make a roster as a backup. If he's not going to start, he better be a backup or a reserve for the All-Star game, because there is no reason that this kid should not make the All-Star game. There's no reason this kid should not be starting. I believe currently the top 3 vote getters in the NL outfield are Brandon Marsh, Ronald Acuna Jr., and I can't remember the last one off the top of my head, but I know it's not anybody that's like better than PCA. Like I'm saying, like PCA deserves to be a starter 100%. And even though I don't like him and a lot of people don't like him, they can all admit PCA is having a great year and he deserves to be a starter. So not only him not starting, but him being 10th in outfield voting is absolutely insane and absolutely just disgusting. So that definitely is a little interesting, that's for sure. Another thing that kind of sparked some controversy on social media was the fact that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. advanced to the second round of voting, but Nick Kurtz didn't for the American League first baseman voting. So in terms of the vote difference, Vladdy, who is currently first in American League first base voting, got 2.5 million votes. Nick Kurtz, who is currently fourth in American League first base votings, got 950,000 votes. So there's about a 1.5 million difference in votes. Now, I'm going to read off their stats, and you tell me if if there is a $1.5 million vote difference between these two guys. You just tell me what you think. So, in 2026, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., in 78 games played, he's batting .276 with a .358 on base and a .360 slugging percentage. He's got a 97 OPS plus, 12 doubles, 4 home runs, and 34 RBIs with a .7 WAR. To go into more detail, OPS plus is a batting metric, and the league average is 100. So he is under the league average in OPS plus. He has only 4 homers in 78 games, only 34 RBIs in 78 games. He's got only a .360 slugging percentage in those games. Like, the fact that his on base and slugging are literally the exact same is mind-boggling to me. And he's got a less than 1 WAR. Now, Nick Kurtz, 2026 season stats. In 81 games, he's batting .280 with a .426 on-base percentage and a .530 slugging. That's almost 200 points ahead of Vlad's slugging. Kurtz has a 159 OPS plus, 15 doubles, 19 homers, 64 RBIs. 64 RBIs leads Major League Baseball. He has 73 walks, leads Major League Baseball. And he has a 3.7 WAR, which is, I believe, top 10 highest in all of Major League Baseball. There is no reason that Vladimir Guerrero Jr., there's no reason that anybody should be ahead of Nick Kurtz in the American League first base voting. Like, it is absolutely mind-boggling to me that Nick Kurtz, not only is he not first, he's fourth. I'm going to have to pull it up, actually, right now, because this is just insane. I had it pulled up earlier. I should have just written it down when I had the chance. He's fourth at the first base position. Vlad Guerrero is first with 2.5 mil, which absolutely terrible. Ben Rice is second with 1.3 million, which I'll give him credit. Ben Rice is a great player. He's a Yankee. I hate the Yankees, but he deserves to be in that top 2 consideration. Munetaka Murakami is third with just under 1 million. And then Nick Kurtz is fourth with 950,000. Um, so I'm not going to complain about Ben Rice because I think Ben Rice deserves to be in that top 2 consideration. But to have Vlad over Kurtz, over Rice, over Murakami's having a better season than Vlad. Like, he's not even having a good season. Like, a .7 WAR and an under 100 OPS plus. Like, and he's played 78 games. He has no excuse. Like, this isn't like he's only played like 20, 30 games, which I'll get into that in a second as well. There's another one that's just like, holy cow. But he's played almost the entire season so far. He's only missed a couple games. And to have a less than 1 WAR, a less than 100 OPS plus, and a on-base percentage and slugging percentage that's the exact same, there's no reason that the MLB leader in RBIs and walks, and as basically a 4.0 WAR, 160 OPS plus, and a 426 on-base percentage, there's no reason he should not be like blowing away in the votes. Like, there's no way that anybody should be ahead of him in the AL first base race. It is absolutely absurd, and it's why I've talked about this, I think, the last 2 episodes now. The All-Star Game voting is so bad because it's just a popularity contest. People just vote for Vlad because, oh, his dad played, and oh, I'm pretty sure he's good. Look, if people would take the time to look at stats, that's different. But it's just a popularity contest where you just click the name that you know the best, or that looks the best, or that you like the most. And for it to be a popularity contest where Vlad Jr. is going to start with those numbers is ridiculous to me. Absolutely ridiculous. And that is, I'm blown away that this is happening and that Major League Baseball is allowing this to happen. There's no way this should happen. Now, the one good thing, Kurtz can still land as a reserve for the American League team, but he's no longer in contention to be a starter, which he should have started. He should be starting for this team. But unfortunately, he cannot because it's a popularity contest now, which is so frustrating. This is the last instance I wanted to talk about, but it's another one that's kind of similar. In the American League catcher race, Alejandro Kirk beat out Dylan Dingler for the second place spot behind Shea Langoliers, which Shea Langoliers is having the best season for an American League catcher by far. So not going to complain about that. He deserves to be in first place right now in the voting. The voters got that one right. This one they did not get right. Alejandro Kirk has 1.5 million votes. He's in second place for the AL catcher. And Dylan Dingler has 925,000 votes. He is third place as AL catcher. So there's about 500,000 votes separating these two. I'm going to read out stats again. You tell me if there's a 500,000 difference. Actually, I think there's more than a 500,000 difference. And I think it's all on Dingler's side, not on Kirk. Kirk should not be winning whatsoever. So Alejandro Kirk in 2026, he has played 15 games. He's only played 15 games. Remember, we're 80 games into the season, so he's played only less than 1/4 of the Blue Jays games. He's batting 192 with a 246 on base and a 288 slugging. 45 OPS plus. Remember, the league average is 100, so he's, 55 points under the league average for OPS plus. He has 2 doubles, 1 home run, 6 RBIs in 15 games, and he has a negative .2 WAR. He's second place among AL catchers with 1.5 million votes because the entire nation of Canada and all the people that know about his name and don't know Dingler, they're all like, oh, we'll vote for him. Like, I'm starting to think, honestly, this is a Canada conspiracy theory at this point. The fact that both Kirk and Vladdy are getting this many votes, but are playing like absolute crap compared to the guys that they're ahead of, this is just a Canada conspiracy theory. The entire nation of Canada is just outvoting everybody else, and that's the problem here, I think. Anyways, now Dylan Dingler, in his 2026 season so far, he's played 75 games, so he's only missed a couple games. He's batting .268, with a 334 on base and a 539 slugging. 539 slugging. That is almost 300 points higher than Alejandro Kirk. Dingler has a 137 OPS plus. That is almost 100 points higher than Kirk's OPS plus. Dingler has 15 doubles, 19 homers, and 58 RBIs. He's got a 2.9 WAR. I don't even know where to begin. I'm blown away by the fact that, the popularity contest and the All-Star voting, it's all just stupid and it's dumb, and I hate it so much. It's so frustrating to me to have to see this and be like, it's just so frustrating, you know. So really, really frustrating to watch this happen. Dylan Dingler and Nick Kurtz both deserve honestly, you could make the case for Dingler over Langoliers. I think Langolier deserves it more, but Dingler should definitely be in that top 2 conversation, and Kurtz should be starting. So, you know, the Canadians have robbed us of that chance, though. So, you know, All-Star Game voting, frustrating. It's a popularity contest, and it freaking sucks. Just sucks so much. Other news revolving around the All-Star Game. It's been officially announced that Mike Trout and Yordan Alvarez have declined their home run derby invitations. Trout declined due to his strained hamstring, which he suffered about a week ago, I think, against the Diamondbacks. And Alvarez just opted out in general, for no specific reason, just to opt out. So, 2 of the best home run hitters in the game, once again opting out of the home run derby. And it seems like every year, more and more players that would be so fun to watch in the home run derby, they just decline. And it sucks. It really does suck, because the home run derby used to be like, kind of like the Pro Bowl or the NBA All-Star Game. Like, it was where you could see the best of the best play. Like watching Barry Bonds in the home run derby, you know? Like, the home run derby used to mean something. Like, I sound like such an old head right now. Like, the last 20 minutes I'm rambling on about all this stuff. But the home run derby used to mean something, and you used to see the best home run hitters in the game playing. And now the last couple years, we've gotten subs that have only hit like Jazz Chisholm last year in Atlanta. He hit like 10 home runs all season. He came out and hit 3 home runs in the home run derby. That's just absolutely stupid, and it's disrespectful to the home run derby, to be honest. But the home run derby used to like be incredible, and the best home run hitters would play. And now guys are too scared they're going to get injured, so they opt out. Now, Trout has a legitimate reason. He doesn't want to hurt his hamstring anymore. He might not even be ready to play for the All-Star Game, which, by the way, he is currently in the top 3 voting for AL outfielder. He'll probably end up being a starter if he's willing to play. We'll see how that strained hamstring heals. But like Alvarez has no reason not to hit in the home run derby. He just opted out because he didn't want to get hurt, or he just didn't want to mess up his swing. And I get not wanting to mess up your swing, but like, it's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating to see. And I just wish more guys would participate. That's basically all the MLB news we have for today. I did want to mention that the Boston Red Sox are currently leading the 4-game series against the Yankees this weekend, 2-0. Got a huge win last night, 6-1. The Red Sox are actually currently playing right now as I'm recording this. I've been kind of glancing back and forth at it. It's the 5th inning. We currently lead 4-1. Masataka Yoshida leadoff homer against Garrett Cole. You suck, you bum. But the Red Sox still own the Yankees. We might suck, but we still own the Yankees. Yankees suck. Honestly, if the Red Sox can find a way to hold on to this game, they're at 4-1 in the 5th right now. If they hold on to this game and then they win tomorrow to get the 4-game series sweep, they will be just 10 games under 500 for the first time in like a month. I think was the last time we were just 10 games under 500. Like I said, this Red Sox team sucks. We just lost the series to the Colorado Rockies. But if we can find a way to put wins together, I keep saying it, and I keep getting clowned for it, but if we can find a way to put wins together, I still believe in this team. I truly do believe this team can do it. I think if we can get Garrett Crochet back, if we can get Roman Anthony back, if we can get Trevor Story back, Marcelo Meyer just landed on the IL, if we can get him back, this team can compete. You know, the starting pitching we have over the last week has been insane. Totally pitched well last night. Early pitched well on Thursday night. Ranger Suarez, the last 3 outings, has been incredible. Sonny Gray has been great. And then Jake Bennett, who is filling in for Garrett Crochet, has pitched pretty well as well. He's actually pitching right now today. He's given up 1 run through 5 innings. That's a pretty good performance for him. I'm very proud of Jake Bennett. Still a young guy, but he's played well in Garrett Crochet's absence for sure. But I still believe in this Red Sox team. Go Sox, Yankees suck. Just wanted to say that really quickly before we move on to our next segment, which we wanted to talk about the World Cup, starting with the obvious. The U.S. men's national team on Thursday night fell to Türkiye 3-2 in their final group stage match. I had the privilege of watching this whole match. Again, before we start this soccer segment, let me just say it once again. I am a casual. I don't know what I'm talking about. I have only watched 20 soccer games in my entire life. I am just going off of what I watched and the little bit that I know. So this is just to inform those of what happened. Do not take my advice as expert advice. It's not. It's just what I observed. So Türkiye ends up scoring in the 98th minute to take the lead 3-2 over the U.S. and win and really escape with a win there. But the big thing that was the talking point for this game was the fact that the U.S. sat a lot of players. They sat a lot of players, we'll just be honest. So we'll go through it right now. The U.S. sat Adams, Balogun, Richards, and Robinson all on yellow cards because they didn't want any of them to get suspended for the round of 32, which I understand that. I respect that. This is a good move by Pochettino, the coach of the U.S. men's national team. Pulisic, he started on the bench. He entered in the 57th minute, but he started on the bench because he was still recovering from that calf injury that he suffered in the first group stage game against Paraguay. He didn't play last game against Australia. He came back in and immediately looked incredible. He almost scored a goal at one point, but as soon as he went in, this team just had a new spark about them. So Pulisic, he looks good. Hopefully that calf is fully healed and he didn't play on it when it wasn't. I'm hoping that he can play the rest of the tournament. Other players that were sat in this game, Sergio Dest, Tillman, and Freeman, all started on the bench. They entered as subs in the second half, but at that point it was almost too late. And then Matt Freese, who was the goalie for the first two group stage games, was sat for Matt Turner, who was the goalie at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. He played in all the U.S.'s games as their goalie. So Matt Turner got the start over Matt Freese in goal. And so basically Pochettino made 9 changes to the starting lineup from the previous match versus Australia. The only players that were the same that started in the Australia match and the Türkiye match were McKennie and Pepe. Those were the only 2 players that were holdovers from the Australia match. Not the other 9 players were completely new starters that didn't start in the last game. So, automatically you're thinking, this is going to mess with chemistry. And obviously, depth-wise, the U.S., we already knew they weren't super deep, but you could tell watching this game, especially until, Dest, Tillman, Freeman, and Pulisic entered in the second half, this team was not as good as our starters were. You could tell it was our JV squad in a way. But this team clearly looked like it just looked rough. And I was so hopeful because the U.S. scored within the first 3 minutes. They scored in the 3rd minute on a goal by, what's his name? Trusty. Trusty scored the goal in 3 minutes. So U.S. takes a 1-0 lead at 3 minutes, and then Turkey scores 2 goals in the first half to take a 2-1 halftime lead. And then they just they dominated the rest of the first half after the U.S. scored. And then the U.S. came out in the second half. They dominated. Pulisic came back in. Dest, Tillman, Freeman came back in off the bench. And we dominated, but we could only get the 1 goal in the second half. We had so many opportunities to score at the end of the game, and we just couldn't. And then our defense just kind of fell flat within the last 5 minutes of the game, allowing Turkey to score the go-ahead goal. So I'll say what I've said to many people talking about the game over the last couple days. It's frustrating to lose like that in the last minute of the game on that goal after working so hard to get back to a tie. Like, if we had left with a draw, I would have been completely content because we played all of our backups and we just looked awful. So to get out of there with a draw would have been great. And it's frustrating to lose like that because we were in such a good position to get out of it with a draw and then we lose in the last minute. That's frustrating. Now, there's no need to panic. There's no need to be all mad about it because as Pochettino said in the post-game interview, we already secured our spot. We already won the group. Nothing was going to change whether we won or lost or drew. It didn't matter. We already knew who we were playing. We knew where we were going, what we were doing. We knew we had already won the group, so there was no reason to worry. There's no reason to worry whether we won, lost, or drew. But at the same time, after you win those first 2 games, you have so much momentum and that the country was so behind you to come out and basically, it just felt so demoralizing for this team. And I know that this team is gonna bond together and band together and be strong in the round of 32. And past that. I predict this team's going to make a run at the World Cup. I don't know if they'll win it, but I think they will make a push for the World Cup. So I have faith in this team that they're gonna come together even after this loss and still be fine. But it's definitely frustrating to lose like that. That's for sure. So the U.S. men's national team finishes 2-0-1 in group play. They will play Bosnia and Herzegovina in the round of 32 on Wednesday, July 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be at a camp, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch that game. I'm praying that I get the chance to watch that game because it's going to be so fun and so great, and I'm hoping to watch the U.S. win their first knockout round game in forever. I can't remember. I talked about it in an earlier episode of the podcast, but the U.S. hasn't won a group stage game, knockout round game in forever, so it'd be great to witness the first one in a long time. Another thing that was brought to my attention that I've been watching very closely, it was brought to my attention by PJ Delgado, actually. He commented on some of my shorts, some of my videos, and then obviously we're friends in real life, so he's reached out to me as well. But Cape Verde has advanced to the round of 32 in their first ever World Cup. Now, Cape Verde, they finished their game last night. They drew against Saudi Arabia 0-0 to move to 0-3-0 in the group stage. So they drew all three games, including that stunner in their first game against Spain. They drew 0-0. Cape Verde, in advancing, they became the smallest country to ever reach the knockout stage in the World Cup. They have a population of around 500,000 people. I think it's just above that. So incredible that Cape Verde has done this. You know, they didn't win a single game, but they also didn't lose. So you kind of have to take it at that. So, you know, I think they drew their first game 0-0. They drew their second game 2-2, and then drawing this final game in Saudi Arabia 0-0. Incredible run by Cape Verde. Super happy for this team, but unfortunately, I think the magic ends in the round of 32. They will play Argentina in the round of 32 on Friday, July 3rd at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That one I will definitely be watching because I'm thinking Messi's going to have a great game once again. He has played so well in these World Cups, these World Cup group games, and I think Argentina is going to kill this Cape Verde team. But I could be wrong. I'm the casual here, so I don't have the expert takes, but super excited for Cape Verde. Happy for them. Congratulations, becoming the smallest country to ever reach the knockout stage. In their first ever World Cup as well is absolutely incredible. Super proud of this nation and what they've been able to accomplish this year at the World Cup. It's been fun to watch for sure. So that'll end our news segment and take us to some questions and hot takes that I got from the Instagram and from comments on YouTube and Spotify, all that stuff we have here. I've got two questions and a hot take to talk about today. I know we're already at an hour in time, so I'm going to try and keep these questions and hot take responses short and to the point because I got to go watch the Red Sox finish this game against the Yankees, and you don't want to sit here and listen to me yap that much. Or maybe you do. I don't know. If so, thank you. I really appreciate that. But we're going to try and keep this thing short, but also answer these questions sufficiently for the people that asked them. So starting off with the first question we have from Logan Garrett on Instagram. He said, with Halliburton, are the Pacers going back to the finals next year? This is a good question, and it's one that's been talked about in the NBA during the entire postseason and really during the regular season as well. So if you don't know, Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles in Game 7 of the NBA Finals last year. It's a super sad thing. It's a super sad story and backstory behind it. The Pacers, I believe, they were up by a decent bit early in the game. I believe this is within the first 5 minutes. Halliburton's hit 3 threes. He's got 9 points. He's shooting lights out. And then he goes for a pump fake and a dribble, and he tears his Achilles within the first 5 minutes of the NBA Finals Game 7, the biggest game of his career. And, you know, Halliburton was the best player on this team. He was the engine that drove this team. And so without him, they end up falling to the Thunder. The Thunder win the NBA Finals, the championship. And, you know, it sucks for the Pacers. But even worse, now Halliburton's out for the entirety of the 2025-2026 season, which left the Pacers in a really bad position. So the Pacers in 2024-2025 with Halliburton, they were 50-32, which was fourth in the Eastern Conference. They lost in the finals in 7 games against the Thunder. Offensively, they averaged about 118 points per game, which was 7th in all of the NBA. And they gave up about 115 points per game, which is around 17th. So they were an above-average team that really just found a way to excel in the postseason. They got hot at the right time. Halliburton went absolutely nuclear in the postseason. He has been incredible to watch. That year specifically, incredible to watch. He was by far the best player on this Pacers team. No shade to Siakam, but Halliburton was the best player on this team. And so watching him go down with that torn ACL in Game 7 was absolutely heartbreaking. And many people, including myself, believe that the Pacers would have actually won Game 7 and the finals if Halliburton doesn't tear his Achilles. He was primed for an absolute heater of a Game 7 and closeout game on the road in Oklahoma City. So the Pacers had an amazing season, and they had a great season, I'll say. They were an above-average team during the regular season, and they got hot towards the end of the year, and they were hot in the playoffs. They took care of, all the teams they needed to take care of. They took care of the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then they almost took care of the Thunder in the finals. Like they were just a really good team and really hot team at the right time. And now this year's Pacers, the 2025-2026 Pacers, they were 19-63, which is 14th in the Eastern Conference. Yikes. And part of that is because the Pacers were tanking. They were tanking especially towards the second half of the season, the end of the season, they were completely tanking. Because this team couldn't compete. It's just how it is. They just couldn't compete. And some things to go along with that. Miles Turner, he left in free agency after, the Pacers 2024-2025 season to go catch a bag in Milwaukee, where he currently is right now. So Miles Turner left, and Halliburton's now torn his Achilles. So it's really just all Siakam in Indiana. And then to start the 2025-26 season, not a good start. And so around the trade deadline, the Pacers traded for Ivica Zubac at the deadline. The Pacers received Zubac and Kobe Brown for Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, a 2026 protected first-round pick, which ended up being the 5th overall pick, Keaton Wagler, to the Clippers, a 2029 unprotected first, and a 2028 second-round pick. So 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, Benedict Mathurin and Isaiah Jackson for Zubac and Kobe Brown. And Zubac is probably a top 5, maybe top 3 center in the NBA. So this is in my opinion, this is a good trade, especially because you're anticipating Halliburton's going to come back next year and he's going to be healthy and he's going to be great. And pairing Halliburton with Siakam and Zubac on the court at the same time is going to be disgusting. I'm excited to watch this Pacers team play next year. But that doesn't take away the fact that this team was dog-awful last year. They averaged 112.4 points per game, which was 27th in the NBA, and they gave up 120.4 points per game, which was 25th in the NBA. So, absolutely bottom of the barrel. They were a bottom 5 NBA team this past year, and they were not contending for anything but a high draft pick, which actually they didn't even get that because they ended up giving their draft pick to the Clippers for Zubac. So, turned into Keaton Wagler. Anyways, looking at the 2 seasons, obviously Halliburton plays a huge role in this team and the way that they run. So it's no question that when Halliburton comes back next year, this team will be way better, absolutely. But the question was, will the Pacers go back to the finals next year? Now, Logan didn't ask if they were going to win; he asked if they're going to go back. So I'm not going to talk about winning. I'm going to talk about getting back there, which means they have to go through the Eastern Conference. And so when you look at the NBA for the 2026-2027 season, especially the Eastern Conference, the Knicks, obviously reigning champs, they're the biggest threat for the Pacers. But if you remember, this Knicks team, which is the exact same, except for the fact that they had Mike Budenholzer as their head coach 2 seasons ago when the Pacers beat them in the Eastern Conference Finals versus Mike Brown now. But yeah, the Pacers beat the Knicks in 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2025 to get to the finals against the Thunder. So the Pacers have proven they can beat this basically the exact same Knicks team as they had last year. So I think the Knicks are the biggest threat to the Pacers in the East, but I think that the Pacers can hang with them. The Celtics usually are a big threat, but with all the problems with Jaylen Brown now, I don't know how much of a threat they're really going to be. The Pistons, who we saw this year, have no playoff experience, and that really ended up costing them in the end. They really struggled in the playoffs. The Cavaliers, it feels like this team is just always going to be stuck in the purgatory of being just pretty good. So we'll see what they end up doing if they end up making any trades this offseason. But right now with Harden and Mitchell and Mobley, and this team is just really good, but not good enough. And it seems like they get to the postseason and they end up just struggling. So I trust this Pacers team in the postseason much more than I trust this Cavaliers team. And then another possible contender would be the Miami Heat with Giannis, but I mentioned this earlier. I don't think the Giannis Heat are going to be able to compete, at least not this year, because they have nobody around Giannis. It's Giannis and Bam, and that's it. And I don't think there's any way that this team can compete with that Pacers team with Halliburton, even if they have Giannis. So, in conclusion, in my opinion, the Knicks are by far the biggest threat. But the Pacers with a fully healthy Halliburton, Siakam, and Zubac is scary. And I think that they can absolutely make a push for the finals. So, I don't know if they will go back to the finals. I think that it'll be the Knicks again next year. But I think that in 2 years, the Pacers will be back there. I think after a year of having Zubac, Siakam, and Hallie together, they get used to each other. And then in the 2027-2028 season, that's when we see the Pacers return. So, no, I'm going to say no next year. The Pacers are not going to make the finals. But they will definitely make a push. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them there if they ended up there. So, moving on to another question, the second question that I'm going to answer, coming from Luke Shackelford on Instagram. The White Sox are playoff contenders in Major League Baseball. So, looking at the White Sox right now, through 82 games, they're currently 42-38, which is first in the American League Central. They're one game ahead of the Cleveland Guardians there. Right now, if the playoffs were to start, they would obviously win the AL Central, but if they weren't leading the AL Central, they would be a +3 in the AL wild card. So they'd be pretty comfortably in the wild card race right now. Offensively, they've scored 386 runs this season, which is good enough for 9th in Major League Baseball, 3rd in the American League, and 2nd in the AL Central, just behind the Twins. And then defensively is where they've really struggled. They've given up 338 runs, which is 18th in the MLB, 9th in the American League, and 3rd in the American League Central. So this White Sox team is clearly built off their offense. Their pitching staff is not very good, which is why a lot of teams think that this team's going to be, fighting for Tariq Skubal at the trade deadline, trying to go grab him. But this White Sox team clearly runs through their offense, and it's easy to see that with all the young talent they have. Talking about the young talent, Vargas, who's 26 years old, he's got an 841 OPS this year. Antonacci, who's 23, has an 810 OPS. Colson Montgomery, who's 24 years old, has an 800 OPS. And Chase Mydroth, who's 24, has a 725 OPS. So those four guys have, top of the league OPSs, and they're all under the age of 26 years old. Super, super talented, young, talented team in the White Sox, who have been playing really, really good baseball as of right now. They currently have a 1-game lead over Cleveland, and a 4.5-game lead over the Twins, and an 8-game lead over the Tigers. So I would say, as of right now, the only teams they're competing against in the AL Central would be Cleveland, and I think the Twins are going to make a compelling case to compete. But I think that the Tigers are going to be sellers of the deadline, and I don't think there's any way they can get back into that race at this point. Maybe they push as a wild card team, but I think for the AL Central race, the White Sox have to worry about Cleveland, and they've got to worry about Minnesota, and that's about it. The White Sox are an extremely young team, but they're playing in a very weak AL Central, which gives me hope as well. So, in my opinion, in conclusion, I think if the Sox young players, their young talent, can stay hot, they can make a push for a wild card spot, because it is a weak American League. So I think they can definitely make a push for a wild card spot, or even an American League Central title, which would be incredible for them to go from worst team in the league 2 years ago to winning the American League Central this year. Would be hilarious, and it would be a great story to talk about. But yes, I do think that the White Sox are playoff contenders, if not AL Central contenders, for winning that division. I like this team. They're very young, so I don't know if they'd go very far in the postseason. They kind of remind me of Detroit Tigers from last year, who got a high seed from playing well in the regular season, but didn't perform well in the playoffs because they just weren't ready yet. This team was too young, they just weren't ready yet. So I think, especially if the White Sox go at the deadline and make a deal to go get Skubal, this team could be dangerous. I think they will definitely make a push for the playoffs, but don't see them going any further than the American League Championship Series at the highest. Which brings us to our final question/hot take of the day. This one is a hot take from George Roberts on Instagram. George says Darren Peterson is better than AJ DeBonsa. talked about this earlier, said I would bring it up again later, which I'm super excited to talk about this. AJ DeBonsa and Darren Peterson were the first and second overall picks in this year's NBA draft. DeBonsa went to the Wizards at first overall, and Peterson went to the Jazz at second overall. And so, obviously, being, the stats guy that I am, being the stats guy that I am, I decided to do a deep dive into their stats because I've watched both of them play a lot in college, but I didn't look at their stats per se. So starting with AJ DeBonsa, who played college ball at BYU this year. He's a forward. He's 19 years old, 6'9", 215 pounds with a 7-foot wingspan. He's a freak of nature at the forward position, really lanky. He's a reminiscent of like a Kevin Durant, kind of like a shorter Kevin Durant, but he's very, very, very scary to watch for sure. In his freshman season at BYU, he averaged 25.5 points per game, which led the NCAA in points per game. He had 6.8 rebounds per game, 3.7 assists a game, and 1.1 steal per game. He shot 51% from the field and 31% from three. So the three-point percentage is not great. He's not a great three-point shooter, but his field goal percentage is incredible. Shooting 51% from the free at field is quite good indeed. So, yeah, so the stats speak well of him there, but even better, DeBonsa has a 28.1 player efficiency rating, which is the best in the Big 12, and it's one of the top 5 in the NCAA this past season. He's got a 60% true shooting percentage, which is insane as well. He's got a 4.8 offensive wins rating and a 1.6 defensive wins rating. So that's basically an offensive efficiency rating and a defensive efficiency rating. His 4.8 offensive efficiency leads the Big 12, or led the Big 12 this past year. His 1.6 defense is an above average defense as well. So, and his 28.1 player efficiency rating also led the Big 12. So, DeBonsa played an absolutely incredible season at BYU for his freshman year, and he proved that he's not just a prospect. He can put up numbers to show that he can totally do this at the next level, and he's going to be super exciting to watch. Moving on to Darren Peterson, who played at Kansas this past year. He's a guard, freshman, 19 years old, 6'5", 200 pounds, with a 6'10" wingspan. Peterson averaged 20.2 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 1.6 assists, and 1.4 steal. He shot 44% from the field and 38% from three. Pretty solid three-point shooting from Darren Peterson. He had a 25.4 player efficiency rating, a 58% true shooting percentage, a 2.0 offensive efficiency rating, and a 1.4 defensive efficiency rating. So Peterson, slightly worse stats than DeBonsa. The only thing that Peterson definitely has on DeBonsa is the fact that he's much better at three-point shooting, much better three-point shooter, which you would expect from a guard versus a forward. But DeBonsa, a much better three-point shooter, but everything else goes to DeBonsa. DeBonsa's got a better true shooting percentage, a much better player efficiency rating, one of the best offensive efficiency ratings, and he averaged 5 more points per game than Peterson did. Also averaged 2 more rebounds and 2 more assists as well. Now, the reason that these stats are a little skewed in a way is because of Peterson's on-the-court / off-the-court issues. If you've watched any college basketball this past season, you know that Peterson often left games early due to cramps or other medical reasons, which has been looked into, and there's still no actual medical proof saying that he was having these medical issues or having these cramps, which is, we still just don't understand why he was leaving these games early. Like, he would play 18 minutes and then be done. And he'd do all this in 18 minutes. Like, he'd score 20 points in 16 minutes, and then he'd go sit on the bench for the rest of the game. In a close game, too. These are close games in the Big 12 and in the NCAA tournament. It was so mind-boggling that he would go and do this in 10 minutes and then go sit on the bench for the rest of the game. It made no sense. It was really concerning, and it's a reason that I think a lot of teams were more willing to go after DeBonsa at the number 1 pick than they were for Peterson. When you watch film, Peterson is undoubtedly one of, if not the most talented player in this entire draft class because of his efficiency in the time that he played. Like, Peterson played way less minutes than DeBonsa did. Way less. and he averaged close to, not the same level. Debance was at a whole nother level above, but he averaged pretty dang near close to the same numbers, which is why it's enticing to say that Peterson is the better player, because if they both play the same amount of minutes, Peterson would average more points, you would think. Technically, you would think that he would score more points and he'd be more efficient in that time than Debance would. With all that being said, though, my take is, although Debance is more of a prospect, Peterson is definitely, I think, the more pro-ready player, and he proved that with his efficiency ratings. Statistically, Debance is the more talented player on both sides of the ball, on offense and defense. And he comes with less controversy and question marks around him. I can't say that Peterson is better if I don't know if he's going to play like most of the game in the NBA. Like, who knows what the issue is with the cramps and stuff. We still don't know what it is. But I just can't trust him fully, and that's the one thing that's holding me back from saying Peterson is better. I think they're so close. And I think if Peterson didn't have this problem with the cramps or the medical issues, whatever it may be, I would definitely put Peterson above Debance. But for right now, I'll say that no, George, Darren Peterson is not better than AJ Debance. I think AJ Debance is the better player because he plays better on both sides of the court, and he's just more available. The best ability is availability. And AJ's playing much more than Darren is, and that's the one thing I think that's holding him back. So that's going to wrap up episode 5. This is by far the longest episode we've ever done, sitting at, I believe it's an hour and 20 right now. Went on a long time, but this episode was jam-packed with so much stuff that's happened in the last couple days. What an exciting week of basketball, baseball, FIFA World Cup. It's been so exciting the last couple weeks, and I'm so glad that I got to share all this stuff with you. Thank you so much for listening if you're still listening at this point, and for watching if you're watching on YouTube. So excited I got to share all this with you. I hope that you all have an amazing day. God bless all of you. I will see you guys next week, actually. Like I said earlier in the episode, but I'll expand on it a little bit more. I am leaving tomorrow for a church camp, so I will be gone for a longer period of time. I'll be back on Friday, so the next episode you can expect will probably be Saturday, sometime around early afternoon on Saturday. So it'll be another week before you get another episode, but it'll probably be another huge one like this that's over an hour long, because there's going to be so much that I have to catch up on. But I'm going to miss talking to you guys. I'm going to miss recording videos. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you guys next week.